Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Well, hello everybody. Hope you liked that intro. As you can tell, I'm not a genius at doing live sessions. I'm still in that early stage. I'm actually doing this off my phone, and I'm using a software called Camo Studio. It's pretty cool. You can throw the Wi-Fi video link onto what's it called? OBS Studios. So if you ever want to try it yourself, highly recommend. It's pretty nifty. Yeah, for camera phones, the smartphones have got such better visuals, autofocus. So at this stage, I'm not going to invest in a webcam just yet or microphone. So hence why I'm using these lovely Corsair headphones with the mic. I'm a bit of a gamer, and but at the moment I think what's come with age when I play video games is that I've narrowed myself down to playing things like Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance and or something completely different like 2 Point Hospital. I don't know whether you know that one. Two very good games. And this live stream, I've named it Manipulating the Form. So, because I received some feedback that came from, I think it was a subscriber. He wanted to see me to go in further depth with shape and form. So I thought, what better way to do that than to jump in on Photoshop? Photoshop's fantastic. It's the bread and butter software of any creative designer. I think if you're a digital artist, you already know about it. And I'll just transition over. Here you go, this Photoshop. So it is a photo editing tool, but it's second to that, it's a drawing app. And there's many others out there. I personally use a pen tablet because I'm a bit of a dinosaur now. So I'm fine with pen tablets. But I noticed that younger colleagues that I work with who are like 10 years younger, they always use the iPad Pro, and I don't blame them. They look beautiful, very intuitive, and I might have to get one of my own. But I want to show you in Photoshop because it's a little easier for me to show you my screen, and I can go into further detail with using different colors and layers and stuff like that. Okay, first of all, I usually get hold of a new canvas. So I close this one. File new. I usually go for about 5,000 by 3,000 pixels, 300 dpi. It's a nice size because that size canvas is 42 megabyte. That's usually the sort of size pixels I usually work with, and I do sketches and concepts. So when you're in a dark room like this, the white background's pretty harsh. So I usually get the paint bucket, choose something a little off-white, a little darker, something like that. Lock the layer, create a new one. Hotkey B for brush, and I usually go for not a jet black because it's too harsh. I usually like going for something slightly off, a bit more realistic, like a pencil. With Photoshop, I won't go into detail too much about it, but you can create your own custom brushes. I create my own. You can use any brush you like if you want to try this at home. But this particular brush, it's a sponge texture and creates a nice little detail that kind of imitates a pencil. You see, when I use Photoshop, I still, even to this day, try to use it and paint with it using textures as if I've traditionally painted it or drew it. So because I find the lovely soft brushes, I find them sometimes very artificial. So I almost try to imitate traditional mediums, even on a digital software. Because when I was in my 20s, I used to work with watercolor and gouache. And the only time I ever used Photoshop was when I was trying to enhance the colors and try and clean up the scan image. And that's how I was taught when I was doing my illustration degree all those years ago. And but now, for the past 10 years, I've been just purely digital. I think the only time I've drawn the most traditionally recently was because of this YouTube channel, like all the Inktober stuff I did, because it's really handy actually having this channel, because it's brought me back to the drawing board. And as you may have seen in my shorts, I've got a whole bunch here. I didn't get through the Inktober. I got halfway, and obviously things come in and things, you have to prioritize in the end. Plus, I found the words rubbish. I wasn't really a fan of the feature word on that day. I was getting kind of bored of it. As you can see, I don't know whether you can see that. Let me have a look. Transition. I've got one up there as well. This was a starfish. Yeah. So these are all the sketches I did, and ink drawings. And these were pretty spontaneous. I usually use a blue pencil to map out very roughly where I was going with these. So I will go on to manipulating the form in a minute. Just because it's a live stream, it's not really scripted. I'm just showing you a little bit of insight. That was the first one I did. And this was a really old one. I held on to this one for a while because I find anything to do with caves, dungeons, ancient structures, particularly anything that involves ancient civilizations, I absolutely love. I recommend looking at Graham Hancock and reading his books like Fingerprints of the Gods. But he's on Netflix with Ancient Apocalypse, and it's fantastic. And I guess when I did this drawing at the time, I thought of an ancient Mayan culture discovered by these Sherpas as they're traveling through the mists of a waterfall of an ancient civilization. And I guess with this channel, Art Quests, I always seem to come back to something mythological, a quest line, a little bit gamey, but something to do with adventure, exploration. I think that's what really fires up my creativity, and which is the whole reason why I started the channel. I found it very difficult to motivate myself alongside my full-time job. So I needed a context. I needed a narrative. So long as I read enough and looked at enough documentaries like Ancient Apocalypse, it inspired me to run upstairs and do some sketching. And hopefully my channel, when I finally get around to doing quest lines for everybody, hopefully that will inspire people to draw and at the same time learn a few fundamentals and skills. There's some funny ones here. I always like to insert a bit of humor into my things. So, yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. But those ink drawings, didn't really spend a great deal of time over those, because I think when it comes to doing anything creative, I think you can get so uptight and worked up about getting everything perfect. And I don't believe in perfection. You've got to have fun, and it's all about the process itself. If you were to do, obviously, a commission or work for somebody, the results matter the most. But when it comes to learning, it's the process. You don't even need to finish or fully finish a piece of illustration. So long as you've learned something on the way, that's all that counts. So, okay, let's try and learn something now. Do a few shapes and get underway. If you think about how should I put it? When it comes to form, sorry, it's my cat. Right, Ruth. Sorry, let me just. Okay, hang on. He wants to get out. Oh, let me just show you though. There he is. Here's my boy. Who's my boy? Yeah, he's my boy. Want to go out? Look, you're live on my channel. Do you want to go? Are you okay sitting there for a bit? Yeah. When it comes to form, sorry, boy. You can decide on whether it's going to be a solid, something rigid, structured, or it's going to be something soft and malleable. So, for example, sorry, let me just bring up Photoshop again. So, if it's rigid and structured and hard, say take for this nutcracker tin, it's basically a cylinder. But manipulating the form is when you start adding features to it and start changing certain angles, hollowing it out, adding the arms, cutting pieces away. So that's what I mean by manipulating the form. So when it comes to a solid object, you'll really be dissecting it. So you'll be drawing it in a slightly different way. So you have to have an understanding on an almost like an X-ray level to know where the pieces will and the sides will come together to make it fundamentally realistic, so it makes sense. And then there's something soft and malleable like putty rubber. So if you think about it, you stretch it, squeeze it, twist it. It's good to know just how those things stretch and curve, especially things that are organic, like the human body or creatures and things like that. So, or fabric, clothing, hats. You could consider that on the same level as something soft and malleable. So, yeah, I'll let him out in a minute. So let's start with something like the cone. Right. So with the cone, I'll draw the cone. Now, it's good to start with really basic shapes. You know the cone, you've got the square, circle, maybe even diamond, triangle, things like that. And then the moment you start thinking of simple shapes, you start seeing them wherever you go in your society, buildings to my computer desk, my monitor, the nutcracker. You break it up into simple shapes. And from there, you use a sort of technique called divergent thinking or process. So, sorry, hang on. Come on, boy. So, So if you think about this cone, for example, you can interpret the cone in many different ways. The wizard's hat, witch's hat, Christmas tree, ice cream cone. So that's where the form itself then becomes manipulated to go in whatever context you decide to push it in. So in this case, I'm going to manipulate the cone or its form into, say, I don't know, a witch's hat. Now, to get started, there is another little technique you can try, is the line of action. Line of action is, it's an animation term in a way. So when you're, I think there's a picture of a pillowcase or a sack where you change it in different ways, and depending on the direction, that tells you the line of action. A little bit similar to the videos I did of the characters, where you create the spine, the curve, which helps you to define the line of action of where the character's pointing. So it will work in this technique that I'll show you. So if I draw some directional arrows or line of action arrows, something like this, whoop, and so forth, I can then push on to different color, different layer, because I don't want to draw on the arrows. And then, first of all, what you could try, well, first of all, do the arrows, and then take the cylinder, if you think of it as a transparent object, so you can see every single edge. Start by the circle, the base, curve the cone in the direction of the red arrows. You can do the same down here, and this is where perspective comes into it, because obviously if this is the angle we're going in, the line of action, it looks like it's going away from us. So as you know, with perspective, when things go away, they get smaller, more narrow. So if you treat this, this is the horizon line or vanishing point. These are the perspective lines that you want to go in. Okay. I can go into perspective more heavily in a pre-recorded video if you want. Okay, so again, I'm following the direction of the arrows. This time, the base of the hat is facing away from us. I'm going to do that again here. And then flip over the hat. Wow, this is really long, this hat. And finish off like that. So first of all, that's an interesting way of creating a line of action here. And now we need to say, let's give it a brim, almost like a witch's hat. So the brim would be around here. Brim would be around here. Obviously, it would tuck behind the object. You could do it again like this, or you could fold the brim like this. In that case, you could add in a fold here. So this is a fold, and this will be the surface behind, so the foreground, background. And then brim of the hat here. Okay, so we've created very dynamic looking hats. At this point, you can decide to give it a bit more of a edge, a detail. I'll change up my brush with a different color. So let's go for some darker. So with that detail, you can think about creating folds. So when things compress, Hang on. So when things compress, you've got the stretch on the other side. And obviously things will start to fold. Okay, so you're going to get this folding that's going to occur, the overlap. But basically like my shirt. So you're going to get things that will fold onto each other and create these sort of overlaps, or this Y shape. I'll show you what the Y shape is. This sort of fold. Simple as that. Think of that. That's your basic start of folding fabric or anything soft. The Y method. So I'll show you an example. Like that. Okay. Do it again. Okay. And then on the other side, you leave alone because obviously the other side is already stretched. So you don't need to do that. And if you want, you can add a little flick like this, little fish hook. That just brings the fabric around. Details like that. Yeah. What I like to do sometimes when things are a little bit worn, you can create a little cut into that shape. This is all part of manipulating a shape. So we turned a basic shape like a cone, put it into context like a witch's hat. And the moment you know the context of that shape, that will be the direction that will help you go in of where to make the cuts and the stretches and manipulating it. So I hope this is helping. This is how pretty much I would do it. It's almost like Gandalf's hat there. And yeah, of course. I'm not going to draw all these hats. But in this case, obviously, you can bring the fabric so it's all one piece. If you want, you can add in some composition lines, guides to help you. So again, I'm going to do a little... No, that's the wrong direction. Sorry. Think about direction when you think of folds. So we're going in this direction, okay? So the fold needs to go that way. Okay? Because it's matching the same curve as the base of the hat. So that's the curve you've got to think about. Okay, like this. Okay, put another one, and you can just call that a day. Because with manipulation, you start to identify the material of the object. So, when it comes to something solid, you can see whether you have to decide whether it's going to be a metal object or wooden object, because then that will change the way you manipulate it. And of course, you can do another fold here. Again, follow the perspective like this. It's going in that direction. Okay. Right. Let's leave that aside. Good thing about Photoshop, you can chop and change, manipulate, and just put it over there for one side. So that's something that's soft, a witch's hat, fabric. If you want, you can even poke holes in it. Well, if we want to do that, we can do that. Almost like Swiss cheese. You can do another circle here. Try to follow the direction, the line of action, where those circles are. If you want, you can put one here. And if there's one on the edge, then it would then expose the inside of the hat like this. Okay. And if you want, you can create a little bit of depth to the hat by leaving a little gap and then flooding the rest with a darker shade, like so. Simple as that. Okay. And you can put as many holes in the hat as you like. Let's hide that actually instead. Put it into a group folder. I do like grouping everything up, keeps it organized. You know, if I don't group things up and name my layers, my colleagues could get really annoyed, because obviously you sometimes have to pass work over to other artists and they have to understand all your layers and files and what they do. Okay, let's go for something a bit more solid. Something like a cylinder. Let's go for blue. I always use a blue pen. Some darker. Okay, so take your cylinder. Now, what can help? Draw a line down either side. It's up to you. This will create a guide, a reference guide, these composition lines, to know where the center point is, but you're doing it at an angle, which will help. It will come in handy later, because then what you're going to end up doing is then cutting into the cylinder, and then you've got to work out perspective-wise how you can then reconnect the cylinder. If there was a big slice taken out of it, you could try and chamfer it. Chamfering means basically cutting it at an angle and connecting it. How can I show that as an example? If you think about it, nothing is a perfect angle, like on the Y and Z axis. There's always beveling or chamfering. Can't find an example of that. You know, I'll just draw you it. So chamfer for this particular cylinder, I would have to cut off a piece going this way. So I'll have to get my big knife and go wha-cha, slice it through like that. But if I was to then just do this, it's not going to make much sense, is it? I need to work out how can I still take a slice out of it and still look realistic, like it makes sense. Okay, well, I'll leave that strike. See what we can do. Keep it blue. And I'll change the opacity. Sorry, I'm fiddling around now. So if I was to chamfer this, I can follow the slice of that line. But at some point, this is still a curved object. I have to follow the angle of the cylinder. So at some point, I have to curve like this and reconnect it here on this side, because the cut came down at an angle this way, like this. So I'm creating some guidelines here. Basically what I need to do now is match that up with this and this and this. It's quite a tricky shape to cut into and then make sense of it. So I'm going to decide I'm going to split it halfway here, get to about here. Sorry, that is messy. Apologize. I have to tilt this canvas a bit. So I've taken a slice out of it. I've taken where the slice has occurred. I then matched the angle of the knife that I've cut through by drawing this line in. Then I split it here halfway, and I use that as a way to try and find the edge of the cylinder here. And hopefully it will make a bit of sense. Does that make sense? You can rub those lines away if you want. Tidy it up. It's the beauty about working digitally. You can tidy up your picture, and Control Z is your best friend. Although when it comes to sketchbooks, I do not encourage using a rubber. But as a demonstration, this kind of helps to show you what I'm talking about. Okay. Well, there you go. There's the slice. So it's effectively, if you look at a straight-on view, I've taken a slice out of it like this. Okay. I regularly, if I'm not using 3D applications, I regularly create concepts and drawings and visuals purely on the basis of drawing like this. I have to just work out in my head perspective and use my mind's eye of what I'm doing with that particular shape. But I have to start with the basic shape first and create little guidelines to help me change up my layers and then add in the final detail and then clean it all up. Okay, so say if we want to punch a hole, a bit like the hats that we did. Say if I want to put one here, and then one on the side. Well, that would be too easy because what will happen? Yeah, okay. We have to remember the perspective. If you think about this, perspective is right here for us. The top of the cylinder is helping us, the direction. So again, we're going to see most of the thickness of the tin down here, this section here. Okay. And it's going to be more invisible on this side because we're kind of looking at it into the tin at a certain angle. When it comes to, say, cutting the side, we have to work out, again, what you can do. Try and remember the perspective of that circle. Do it again down here, if it helps. As you can see, it's going to match. Wipe that away. And there you have your cutout. Okay. A little shadow in. See, obviously you wouldn't, and on the other side it would naturally be over here. And then at some point it will connect on the other side, but we don't see the other side. So it's almost if like somebody's taken a bite out of the cylinder, like a perfect slice. Um, if anybody's even watching. Got 2 people watching. Okay. So basically think of one thing. Think of a single object. Could be anything you like. In this case, I chose the cone. Decide whether the structure is going to be a solid or a soft object, something malleable. And then the third aspect is thinking about is if it's a solid, is it going to be, you got to think about the viewpoint, proportion, and construction. And if it's soft, it's going to be something that's either been squashed, stretched, or draped, like a fabric, or like using gravity as another tool to manipulate something soft. Obviously, with something solid, any form of gravity, it's not going to really change anything solid. So those are 2. So that's something to think about. So if I was to take like this putty rubber, as it is, I could think about how I could change this to something soft. So here's the ground. If I think about gravity, so obviously the weight would be more pronounced at the base. And you can take it as far as you like. Depending on whether you want. And if you wanted to drape it over a pole, you can decide on this is going to be something, a softer fabric, like this. And again, that's when you start to use the Y folds, using the composition lines so you know the direction in which the object is going in, the perspective. So almost as like a worm. There's the center line. Then create your folds in the same direction. Okay. Obviously reducing that as it gets further behind the object. Create some overlap. And then you can have it hang the other side. Again, you can add in those composition lines. Let's try something crazy. Oh, hang on. I'll tell you what I did today. I was trying to work on creating a character tin whereby I was just trying to create split down the middle, so to show how it's constructed. So first of all, I had to think about straight away the perspective. So I usually generally have a similar perspective to the cylinder here. So if you want, you can create the floor itself, but so basically what I was doing, I first of all drew a cylinder to help me as a guide. That way, and creating the split, so the tin itself is split apart into two pieces, simple tooling. Then create the line where the split is, and then do it again, same direction, showing the inside. That's all I had to go on as a reference. From there, you can decide what you want it to be. You can decide maybe a fairy tale tower, matching the perspective. When it comes to drawing this curve here, you'll find that when you get to the edge of each line, it curves much more. I see a lot of people when they draw, they'll draw something whereby it just does this, where this top bit looks fine, but this suddenly just looks a bit flat. The perspective doesn't quite match. It almost stops dead on these areas. Where if I was to draw this again, wipe out that bit, it curves much more aggressively just at the edges, and then it comes out like this. So it almost kinks like a smile at the end. So keep that in mind. Okay. So using the cylinder as a basic shape, as a structure, a foundation, a guide, I can then decide on, I've already set my perspective out, so I can then just play around with the shape as much as I can. I can create a tower if I want. Again, try and kink it up at the ends more than you would normally do. Now usually what happens is that this curve, depending on what angle, this curve, say if you're looking an object straight on, it would just be dead flat at the top. But as you go further down the object, this curve will start to become much more pronounced, like this. So your eye level is here, and technically and theoretically that will be the table down here, like this, and that will be the perspective. So obviously that curve becomes much more pronounced the further you go down. So yeah. So in fact, the way I'm going with this isn't going to match, but that's okay. So if I get further down, this would be really curved down here, wouldn't it? Much more so. Straight lines. Sometimes if you want, you can just offset. I usually like offsetting it. I don't like matching the line like this. If I offset the center, so at least I have a perspective line like this, or a guide to help me, that usually helps, because I might want to then tuck it in, maybe add a window, follow the curve, and then create some depth. It's the inside of the building. Create some stones. They're rubbish. This is very stylized. There's no way realistic because obviously the stones are huge in comparison to the window. What I usually like to do, I like to create 3 squares, and then because you're going to be there forever if you're going to draw every single brick face, and just push it out. And if you're working digitally, you can quite easily just copy and paste a little if you want, just to speed things up. Oh, sorry, I got a new keyboard. It's not working, so forget it. I'm being lazy. I should just draw it in. Anyway, you get the idea. And for the gate, I'm going to off-center it. Just down here like that. I can cut off the base. Create a little pole. I don't know what this thing is for, but anyway. So that's kind of roughly how I'd go about if I was to create any object, is that I would map out the basic form and then work my way into it, chop and change it. Or you can, what I've done there with the tower is that I've kind of I've just mainly used the cylinder here as a guide, a perspective guide, the angle I'm looking at. This is an example where I'm literally cutting into the shape. So you could say you would see this more in context with maybe a piston, something engineer would sketch up. You can decide what context this is. I have no idea where you'd fit that in context. So somebody's just dropped a sausage on a beanpole. Okay. I'm not sure where else to take this really. Because I could just endlessly chop and change loads of different shapes. I mean, we haven't tried a square yet. So here's your cube. If you want, you can change up the colors. This is the other side of the cube. Maybe I want to chamfer the corners, which would be a bit of a challenge. Let's give it a go. Here and here. Okay. So again, try and use your imagination. So if I was to cut off sections of this cube like this directly, you'd wind up with chamfering on both planes of the object, like how I'm demonstrating. And also on the sides here, you wouldn't really see the other side of the plane, so it would almost virtually be, the way I've drawn it for this reason, oops, you wouldn't see the other side of the plane, this section. You wouldn't be able to see that. So this is pretty straightforward. And you could do the same down here. I'm not sure what this exercise would be helpful towards from somebody who's probably drawing for the first time. Learning a little bit about perspective. I'm still trying to gauge whether any of these little demonstrations are actually helping at all. Because I've been drawing them for so long, they're easy for me, they're very intuitive. I mean, they're not perfect, like I said earlier on, but for me, I think, is this really useful? But you let me know, comment, give me some feedback. So I've been going for almost an hour. That's actually the longest live stream I've done. I did ramble on a bit about my ink drawings. Rufus came in, made himself known. I'm just thinking where else to take this, really. So with this cube, perspective-wise, if I was to fit it on the vanishing point, the vanishing point is the horizon, basically what you're looking directly at. So essentially, this would be technically the vanishing point. I see it as almost the, when you look out to sea, where it just stops flat and then you have the sky. So the way I would set this cube would be roughly down here. Now that's just a guess, but if I was to find a point of interest, you can see, hang on, new layer, you can see how this could, see it's not, so if, yeah, it's not actually, so if I really wanted to push the perspective of this cube, excuse me, if I really wanted to exaggerate the perspective of this cube, because this cube is just purely demonstration of just chamfering the edges. As you can see, it doesn't fit in line. It's way off. It's almost isometric. Isometric is basically, there's no perspective, it's just shot down. You might see in video games. So, shall we try and fix this? Let's take this cube. Again, what's great about Photoshop, you can just drop the opacity. Grab a different color. Yeah, that'll do. Let's follow. Okay. Yeah, let's go straight down. Okay. If you want, you can draw a center line. And then do a faint line like this. And that will be the... Sorry, I'm drawing so close to the edge of this canvas. It's very awkward in this video. Let me just find the cube. Cut it away. Sorry, it's not super slick. I need to push this up. No, I need this as well. Let's just borrow this, cut it away. Let's put it at the top because bear with me. Boom. Group. God damn it. Group it in the folder, Tom. Right. Right, where was I? Okay, I'm going to use the perspective lines I created. I mean, if I wanted to be really accurate with these perspective lines in Photoshop, there is tools at your disposal. You can create these solid lines like this. Create another one down there. Another one over there. Oops. Press enter to confirm, like that. You could do that if you want. Well, I like to keep it loose, because this is what you do in your sketchbook. Okay, let's follow the cut. Cut's going to go this way. Oh wow, I'm getting super confused over this. Sorry, I'm tired. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Back on track. Should know what I'm doing. I do this all the time. Okay. I should. Pro tip, just draw a box first and then chamfer it again. That might help. Okay, so let's try do it again. So a solid box there. Boom, boom, boom. Down there. Like this. Okay. There's your perspective. Everybody's happy. Change your opacity down. And let's get chamfering. So the chamfer's going to be there. Ha ha ha. You see? I just proved how helpful it is to first create the form first, the basic fundamental shape, before you start dissecting it. It will save you so much time, because you might go into detail and go, oh, it's completely off. The perspective's off, or I got it. And then you fix that area, and then you go, wait a minute, now it doesn't quite match up with what I've done. It's, yeah. Okay, yeah. When it gets to an hour, I'm going to call it a day, if you don't mind. How long have I been on here? Oh, wow, yeah. I got about 30 seconds, but... Oh. Yeah. So, this is only the beginning. Obviously, I'm going to do this channel for a very long time, however long it takes. Hopefully, it will be the greatest success in the world and a story that I'll tell my kids one day. I have no idea. So, I'll be revisiting manipulating the form as much as you like. I think perspective as well, they both go hand in hand, because they're three-dimensional, and also when you stretch it, you're going to be stretching something far away. You need to know perspective. It just, they coincide. Yeah, do that for another day. Well, these are pretty random drawings. Not my usual sort of stuff that I leave on my Photoshop. I usually end up with scenes like this, like painterly dungeon scenes. Do you remember when I was talking about just at the first part of the live stream? I did these a while ago actually. I love anything that's to do with ancient structure, mythology, creatures, characters, anything that has a story behind it, like the underworld, the giant. Obviously, you can see there's a little bit of form manipulation that can come into it. Like, so you've got spheres, some basic shapes, you've got archways that are where in these particular images this is where I use values as my strength to pick out areas of interest. So this has got nothing to do with the particular topic that I've been doing tonight, but I just want to show you that I can draw in detail. That I do spend time over my sketches and have a lot of fun. Those little creatures in the foreground, in the shadows. I also have a thing about skeletons and should I say dead animals? Not really. But I used to sometimes when you're younger, you used to go off the beaten path and you would say go down to the beach or in a cave and you'd find like a bird, like an old cormorant, like a seabird, and maybe been washed up and it's all twisted and you can see its skeleton and there's a whole history there and you see little creatures and crabs that have been in there and limpets against the wall. There's been all this activity. I don't know. I find those sort of things interesting. There's especially if somebody's been in there and they've carved things into the wall. I love all that stuff. So anyway, I'll leave it there. That's been a good hour. I'm hoping it's been of some use to you. And as you might as you might know that I like to do things pretty raw. I don't really chop and change or edit things that much. I kind of like it. Plus, I have the excuse because I've only just started this channel in September. So, I'll leave it there. I don't think anybody was really watching in this session, but obviously you can play back and look back at what I've done. And this weekend I'll work on doing another video on manipulating the form and see where that goes again. Yeah. Anyway, and a big thank you to all the subscribers so far. I've got, as of 424 subs, which is good. I hope to get to 500 by Christmas. So, but thank you for watching and subscribing, and have a good weekend. Bye.